Hosea 5, we did part of verse 7 and we gave you a little tease about the rest of it and left it up to you to figure out the hard stuff. I think that's what happens with most of these commentators. Most people that write commentaries, they will write all of the stuff you could have figured out on your own anyway. And when it's something difficult, they just skip over it as though it wasn't even there. And you're left thinking, well, what about the part I missed?
I looked in a couple places and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Hosea 5, verse 7. They have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have begotten strange children. They have begotten, strange children. Now shall a month devour them with their portions. Okay, now we can compare this with the book itself and understand the first part of it clearly. In chapter 1, verse 2, we saw this. The beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea. The Lord said to Hosea, Go take unto thee a wife of whoredom, and children of whoredoms. For the land hath committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord. Okay, that's strange children right there. He's taking a woman who has her own children that she doesn't know where the mama daddy is. the baby daddy is. Whatever the slang is they use nowadays. In verse 4, he says this, And I will not have mercy upon her children, for they be the children of whoredom. Oof. Okay, God says, I recognize some children down there I don't recognize. They're wicked. I like this statement. I'm going to give it to you. Dr. Ruckman says it this way. When the church flirts with the world, strange children begin to appear in the congregation. That is true. Look around most congregations and it looks more like the world than it does the church. And that's what happens. Okay, now let's get to the hard part. The last part of that verse says, Now shall a month devour them with their portions. Okay, so there's got to be some explanation for that. Obviously, it's 1 month. 1 month means 30 days. If you're a Jew, it's a 30-day calendar, a 30-day month for the calendar. So 30 days, something happened in 30 days that he says is going to devour them. Okay, did anybody... Yes?
See, I looked at Dr. Roberts, he was talking about that king that only reigned a month.
Shalom? Mm-hmm.
Shalom.
Mm-hmm.
But, and he was devoured in a month. But I don't know, I didn't catch his drift on how it went with this.
Well, what he's trying to say there is and I'll show you that, is he's saying that that king he didn't give you all the details on that. What he should have explained to you is that is the end of the line for Jehu. Jehu came in and God told him, you'll get 4 sons. You're going to be a dynasty of 4. And after that, you're done. It got so bad that the last king is Shalom, and he only left him on the throne for 1 month. Now that could be, I'm going to show you another one that I think is more likely, but that one could be. Let's find it in our Bible. The reason this one could be a good explanation is because God's already used this example in the book of Hosea. Look at Hosea 1 verse 4. Hosea 1 verse 4. And the Lord said unto him, Call his name Jezreel, for yet a little while, and I will avenge the blood of Jezreel upon the house of Jehu, and will cause to cease the kingdom of the house of Israel. Okay, so he says, I'm cutting off the king that I appointed. Now, don't forget the fact that God appointed Jehu. Even though he's not of the tribe of Judah, remember the prophet said, he sent his little lackey in there and said, Go tell Jehu, God's anointed him to be king. And his mission is going to be, go kill Ahab and wipe out that line. Okay, so that was God directing that thing. So in essence, Even though he was not of Judah, he was a God-appointed king. And his line ends after 4, and I'll show you why. 2 Kings 10. 2 Kings 10, verse 31. Second Kings 10:31. But Jehu took no counsel to walk in the law of the Lord, the law of the Lord God of Israel, with all his heart. For he departed not from the sins of Jeroboam, which made Israel to sin. If somebody's bad, if it's a bad king, usually they get pointed back to this guy right here, Jeroboam. He's no good. And if there was anything good in a king, they would be compared to David. Or to say they were no good, they would say they didn't act like David. Two opposites, Jeroboam and David. Verse 32, in those days the Lord began to cut Israel short, and Hazael smote them in all the coast of Israel. From Jordan eastward, all the land of Gilead, the Gadites, the Reubenites, the Manassites, from Aurora, don't say that fast 10 times, which is by the river Arnon, even Gilead and Bashan. Verse 29, 2 Kings 10:29. Howbeit, from the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel to sin, Jehu departed not from after them, to wit the golden calves that were in Bethel and that were in Dan. That is a hot topic with God. God does not want any idols. He doesn't want any other gods, but he definitely doesn't want any other idols being set up on his land. This is God's land. Look at it in verse 30. And the Lord said unto Jehu, because thou hast done well in executing that which is right in mine eyes, and hast done unto the house of Ahab according to all that was in mine heart, thy children of the 4th generation shall sit on the throne of Israel. He promised him 4. Because he did do something right. Now he did some bad things. That's why the 4 is there. 4 and you're done. Foe and no mo. Now that's one explanation for it. And that one you've got good grounds to use that one because he's already talked about Jehu in the book of Hosea. That is in 752 is the year. Dr. Ruckman gives you a weird year on that. I put the year at 752. And so that could be. I don't think so. I think Hosea is giving you some information about some things that are way future that have not happened yet. So I'm going to compare that 1 month. Now, one of the reasons, I have to tell you this, one of the reasons I think I don't have a real good feeling about that explanation for it is this. That did not devour Israel's portions. It didn't really stop anything. Mahanaim took the throne after he killed Shallum. He sat there for 1 month. His adversary came up, killed him, and sat on his throne, and then reigned for 10 years. Okay, so we didn't see a big change. They didn't have any major loss in wealth. There could be something in the spirit realm that was a major change. That could be so. I'm going to show you one I think fits better. Zechariah chapter 11. Zechariah 11, verse 8. This one's going to open up a whole nother batch of questions. Zechariah 11, verse 8. Zechariah 11:8. 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month, and my soul loathed them, and their soul also abhorred me. Okay, so here's something that happens in 1 month. This something that happens in 1 month is future, and it's got a tone of the tribulation. Look back at verse 3. There's a voice of the howlings of the shepherd, for their glory is spoiled. A voice of the roaring of the young lions, for the pride of Jordan is spoiled. Thus saith the Lord my God, feed the flock of the slaughter. Slaughter? That's hearkening back to what we know about the tribulation. They're going to get their heads cut off. Cannibalism is going to start back up. That's slaughter. And they're his sheep. Isaiah says, all we like sheep have gone astray. We use that to preach to people, but that's taken totally out of context. A lost person is not a sheep of God. And he's not gone astray. Before you were saved, you weren't a sheep that went astray.
That's right.
You were a fish that needed to be caught and changed into a sheep. Jesus told Peter, I'll make you fishers of men. So you were a fish. Once you got up on land, you turned into a lamb. Okay, so where did I stop? Verse 5. Whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. For I will no more pity the inhabitants of the land. Sounds like Hosea, doesn't it? God saying, I'm not going to have mercy, I'm not going to pity. Same thing here. Saith the Lord, But lo, I will deliver the men every one unto his neighbor's hand, and into the hand of his king. And they shall smite the land, and out of their hand I will not deliver them. And I will feed the flock of slaughter, even you, O poor of the flock. Okay, so let's identify some of that. In the tribulation, the people who don't take the mark are poor, because you don't have the mark to go buy and sell, and you can't get your hand read at McDonald's anymore, so you're out. But those are going to be poor people, and he's going to feed them again. He's going to feed them just like he did in the wilderness. He's going to drop down manna for them out there in Petra. And he says he's going to feed them, and they're going to be poor, and they are his flock, Israelites. He says, And I took unto me 2 staves, the one I called Beauty, and the other called Bands, and I fed the flock. Beauty and Bands, you find it again in Isaiah. It's a reference to the north and the south. Verse 8, the verse we began with, 3 shepherds getting cut off. Verse 9, Then said I will not feed you. That dieth, let it die. And that is to be cut off, let it be cut off. And let the rest eat every one the flesh of another. That's obviously tribulation. That's cannibalism. 3 shepherds got cut off in 1 month. And they hated God. God hated them. Yes, it was a mutual thing. They were on the same page as far as that went. Okay, shepherds. A shepherd is a leader. He's someone who guides the flock. I don't think this is necessarily an Israelite king. They're probably, from the tone of it, they're in bondage here. And this will be in the tribulation. They'll be under what's called the time of the Gentiles. Gentiles are running the world right now, not the Jews. As much as the Jews start to get ahead, the Gentiles come in and stomp them back down. And it's just going to get worse in the tribulation. Now, this is all connected with the Antichrist. Of course, God uses the Antichrist. The devil's not just down here running his own show and doing what he wants to. God's telling him what he can do and cannot do. And that's I think I've showed this to you before, Revelation 17. This is... This is, the whole tribulation is part of God's design to punish his people. Now he's going to pick up a spanking stick to hit them with. The old thing was the parent would tell the kid, you go out and get me a switch and it better be a good one. Well, that's what God's doing here. Is he's gone out and he found him a switch. This time, he's been using humans as switches. This time, the last time, he's going to use the devil himself as the switch. Revelation 17, look at verse 17. Now let's back up to 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. So Vatican City gets burnt down. Verse 17, for God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree to give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. God's running this whole show, even in the tribulation. The devil has to do what God tells him to. Even as wicked and sinful and satanic as the forces of wickedness are, they can't go 1 centimeter past what God allows, even in the tribulation where he allows a lot. Let's find it in Daniel. Daniel 7. Daniel 7. Daniel 7, verse 23. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth. Okay, we saw 3 taken out at once, and one last one shows up. Okay. Which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. Okay, so that's got to be the Antichrist. The last kingdom is the Antichrist. He comes in, he rules the earth. The last Caesar, the last world leader that has the whole world under his thumb is the Antichrist. 24. And the 10 horns, remember seeing about 10 horns in Revelation? Out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and shall be diversed from the first, and shall subdue, what? 3 kings. 3 kings get taken out. Now, we're going to use this again in a minute, but I'm just going to go ahead and change my notes all up, so you can bear with me. Revelation chapter 12. Revelation 12. Revelation 12 in one hand, and Revelation 13 in another. We'll start in 13. Yes. Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his 10 horns, or upon his horns, 10 crowns. How many crowns? 10. Okay. We found out those were 10 rulers. Now back up to chapter 12. Chapter 12, verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Thought it was 10. What's missing? 3. 3 he cut off in 1 month. Now, I don't know. You take it and figure out what you can do with it. We know the last kingdom of the earth is the Antichrist kingdom. Look at it in Daniel 7:25. Daniel 7:25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High. Great not meaning good, great meaning in volume and quantity. And shall wear out the saints of the Most High. I think he's here already. I'm always wore out. And think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hands until a times, and the dividing of times. 3.5 years. That's the last period of the tribulation. 26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Okay, that takes you all the way through the tribulation to the millennium setup right there. So we know who that last kingdom is. The last kingdom is the Antichrist. And we've seen there's 3 kings. These are placeholders that are put in place when the Antichrist comes in, right before the man of sin, Satan incarnate, sits down. The 10 kingdoms are one after the other, but not necessarily in time. I think many of these kingdoms have already come and gone. Obviously, we could probably count Rome. I mean, that's a sure thing. We can probably count Babylon. That's a sure thing. Probably Persia, for sure. You can go through and try to count them and put numbers on them. I don't know. I can't give you all the specifics of that. I don't know. Look at Revelation 17. Revelation 17, verse 12. Ten Kings, I think a lot of this is pictures, types, illustrations that we've seen in history that are going to be mirrored, or the real thing is going to show up in the tribulation. Watch this. Revelation 17:12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet. Meaning, what you've learned about in Daniel may have been portrayed and pictured in history. However, it's not the fulfillment of the Daniel 70 weeks and God's full punishment on his people. Because here there's going to be another set of 10 that have not yet received their kingdom yet. This is going to happen in the tribulation. But receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Okay, that's something future that's going to happen. Those 3 shepherds in Zechariah are probably something that is leadership team, some sort of a ruling class that the Antichrist has. And I've got way more notes on that, but I think that pretty much sums it up. Look at this one. This will be interesting to you. Micah chapter 7. Micah 7 verse 14. Here's how God's going to feed his people in the tribulation. Micah 7:14. You remember who's going to be here in the tribulation. Moses and Elijah for the first half of it. He says this. Feed thy people with thy rod, the flock of thine heritage, which dwell solitarily in the wood, in the midst of Carmel. Let them feed in Bashan, in Gilead, as in the days of old. According to the days of thy coming out of the land of Egypt, will I show unto them marvelous things. Now, lots of things to talk about in that. The place they're being fed in that passage is not Petra. Where they're being fed in that passage is up here. Carmel. That's where Elijah and the prophets of Baal were. Up there at the end of the Megiddo Valley. That's the River Kishon, something that we'll see in a minute again. He says, feed them there. So God's going to be doing this during the tribulation, and I think it's only going to be those who know their history and know what manna is. Remember, that was what happened when the children of Israel were fed with manna. They walked out there and they said, what is it? And they had to be told, okay, this is something you can eat, and here's how you gather it and all that. I think God's going to do this for his people that are being persecuted. They can't go to the grocery store. They can't go to McDonald's. They're going to walk out in their backyard one day, and there's all this stuff on the ground. And it's going to click. God's feeding me. That's what he's going to do right there is what he says. Now, that's in a different state than Petra. We know that's going to happen in Petra too as well. Psalm chapter 78. Psalm 78 verse 2. He says, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. Most people don't cover this chapter because of what it claims. Most people will tell you this chapter, if they're going to preach it, they're going to preach it practical, and there's lots of practical stuff you can do. Most people love these allegorical passages because it's easy to make it say whatever you want it to say. An allegory I can turn into just about anything. And you can get a blessing as long as what I turned it into has good Bible supporting it. But let's take it literal. He said it was a parable and a dark saying. Verse 24. And it rained down manna upon them to eat, and given them the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Okay, that's how God feeds people miraculously. And that's what he's going to do again in the tribulation. He says he's going to, in our passage, he said he's going to, I'll show unto him marvelous things, according to like the days when he brought them up out of Egypt. And that's what he's going to be doing again in the tribulation. The other thing that is not real popular, but this is truth, and I'm just going to give you enough of it so you know it's there. Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28, verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young, and shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also thou shalt not leave there thee either corn, nor wine, nor increase of thy kind, nor flock of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Sennacherib, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, all of those guys came in and did some destruction, and that's what they're doing. Verse 52. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high fenced walls come down, whether thou trustest. You find that they're trusting in Jerusalem to save them. And he says that's a poor thing to put your trust in. The city walls, he says, are crumbling, and you're trusting in that wall right there, and then you've daubed it with some untempered mortar as though that's going to support you. Verse 52. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high fences come down, wherein thou trustest, through all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body. That's not out in the field. That's cannibalism. This is so bad they're going to eat their own children. This is what's going on in the tribulation. Now, this is not a good thing. These are not good people doing that. That's the people that are Israelites. Now, I think this is going to happen again in the tribulation. I don't know that I could give you enough Bible to support it. So you take it or leave it, okay? But here's what I think happens in the tribulation. The Antichrist is so mad at the Jews, just like he has been all through history, that everybody is allowed to get the mark except a Jew. And that's where this comes in. Even the Jews are having to do extreme things. I don't think any of them that eat their children are of the good lot that are the redeemed and get to make it out. But that's what's going to go on, is they're going to be eating their own children. The flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness, wherein thine enemies shall distress thee. So that you can read the whole passage. It goes on with more gory details. Lamentations 4. We've not really experienced hunger. There's certain things in life that would motivate you to do things that you never would have done before. I think one of those is true starvation. Lamentations 4:9. They that be slain with a sword are better than they that be slain with hunger. For these pine away, stricken through for one of the fruits of the field. The hands of the pitiful woman have sodden their own children, boiled them. They were in their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. That's what's going to happen again in the tribulation. Isaiah 6. Isaiah 6, verse 13. God talking about Israel. Isaiah 6, 13. Had to be a 13. But yet in it shall be a tenth, and it shall return, and shall be eaten, as a teal tree, as an oak, whose substance is in them when they cast their leaves. So the holy seed shall be the substance thereof. Israelites, a tenth of them are going to be allowed back in. And they're allowed back in because they're going to be slaughtered and eaten. That's wickedness. And that's what's going on in the tribulation. 10. Do you know what 10 is? 10 is a tithe. I'm going to give you this because everybody gives you the other side of it. A tithe is simply you offering to God something so that in the Old Testament it was an actual product. You brought your grain, you brought whatever, your firstling of your herd and all that. That was a tenth that you brought, a tithe. And what happened to it was eaten by the priests. Israel's not been doing any tithe. Here God's taking the tithe from the people. They're going to be eaten. Ooh, God's getting his tithe another way. Ooh. Now that's the most extreme punishment at the end. The way it began was in Isaiah. I should have gave you the chapter. It's early on in the book of Isaiah. He says, 10 acres of field's only going to bring in one bath. 10 baths only going to produce one. And so they're going to lose 90% of their harvest. That's the reverse tithe. God says, okay, I'll tithe you. And I'll take the 90. And so they never did connect the dots. And so the way it ends up is the people themselves come back, 10% get eaten. Back in Zechariah, just to show you where all this is in context, Zechariah 11:17. Zechariah 11:17. Notice the phrase in there, idle shepherd. That's the Antichrist. He's a fake shepherd, and that probably is giving you more information on him saying there was 3 shepherds that I destroyed in 1 month. Shepherd meaning a leader, doesn't mean that he's approving of them. Even the Antichrist is considered a shepherd. He put idol on it, so you know it's no good, a bad shepherd. Okay, Hosea 5. Hosea 5, verse 8.
What? Got up 7?
Yeah, that's enough heavy stuff. Now, since Jan isn't here, I'll give you Jan's explanation that she started. She didn't follow through with it, but she was wondering if the 30 days there, the 1 month, doesn't match the 1 month that begins the time period that you find in Daniel. In Daniel, you're given 2 separate time periods, and they are completely different than the time periods given in Revelation. In fact, do I have it here? I don't have it close at hand.
Get to 8 if you do that.
Yeah, no, we may never finish if I do that. But that could be, but I think we need to connect it more with all tribulation and 3 shepherds going down in 1 month, and that 1 month being the same month that their substance is taken. Okay, Hosea 5:8. Hosea 5:8. Blow ye the cornet in Gibeah, and the trumpet in Ramah. Cry aloud at Bethaven. After thee, O Benjamin. Okay. We've just seen, I'm cutting off, I'm destroying. Bad news is coming. Now he's saying, go blow the trumpet. What that means is get ready, the fight is coming. prepare, be ready to fight. Now he says, after thee, O Benjamin. I'm going to take a little different viewpoint on this than a lot of people will. Okay. Blow the trumpet. Of course, that means get ready for war. I'm just going to tell you where the references are so I can get to the good part of this. You'll find that in Jeremiah 4, verse 5 to 8. You find it again in Jeremiah 6, verse 1. And in Joel 2, verse 15 to 17. Okay, that covers one portion of the notes. They're saying, after thee, O Benjamin. Now, why would they say that? Benjamin? Who appointed Benjamin to be the army leader? The other thing is this. He's been talking to the north. When he mentions the south, it's just a side note. Benjamin's in the south. Benjamin and Judah stayed in Judah. So why is he saying, after thee, Benjamin? All right, some wild stuff in there. I think the reason is in contact with everything that we've seen so far. They've always been picking the loser. Benjamin usurped the throne. When Saul reigned, he was of the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin's not supposed to sit on the throne. Look at it in Genesis 49. Genesis 49, verse 10. Before either kingdom or the kingdom united had any king, God says this. Genesis 49:10. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come. That is, from now until the millennium, a king has to come from Judah. And unto him shall be the gathering of the people. So that'll be millennium. But he says, until then, the king only comes from the tribe of Judah. So why did somebody jump on the throne that wasn't from the tribe of Judah? Because there's always been a usurper before the real thing. Always. Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14, and you know what verse we're going to. 13. For thou hast said, this is of course Lucifer, for thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Okay, that's the usurper. That's the one who wants the throne. Okay, you know what Israel did? Israel chose the usurper, the one who actually sat on the throne that shouldn't have been on the throne. Same thing the devil wanted to do. Same thing he's going to do on earth when he gets here. So, they're telling off on themselves. After the fake Benjamin, let's go appoint him. Wrong one. Find it in Judges. Judges 5, verse 14. Judges 5, verse 14. This passage would take, if we went through Judges 5, I think I tried to do it once, it would take about 6 hours to cover all that's in Judges chapter 5. This is Deborah's song, and it's all prophecy. Judges 5, verse 14. Talking about the battle with Barak and Sisera. She said, I guess this is a she. She says, out of Ephraim there was a root of them against Amalek. Now here's our phrase. After thee, Benjamin, among thy people, out of Machar come down governors, and out of Zebulun they that handle the pen of the writer. Now that's a small minority. It's a few that did help, that did the right thing. But watch the context of the rest of this. When you get done with this chapter, you'll see that, I'm not going to read you the whole chapter, but don't get scared. But when you read this chapter, you'll see It was God that delivered them because very few showed up to fight. Look at the verse in verse 15. Look at the end of it. For the divisions of Reuben there was great thoughts of heart. Why abodest thou among the sheepfolds? Okay, they didn't show up. Judges 5 verse 15, and then that was the beginning of 16. Now verse 17. Gilead abode beyond Jordan. He didn't show up either. And why did Dan remain in ships? He's got some boating logs he needs to fill out. Asher continued on the seashore and abode in his breeches. Zebulun and Naphtali were people that jeoparded their lives unto the death in the high places of the field. Now they came out and did some fighting. Now let's get some more good stuff. Verse 19. The kings came and fought. Then fought the kings of Canaan in Taanach by the waters of Megiddo. Every time you see Megiddo, there may be an exception, but I don't know one. Every time Megiddo comes up in the Bible, it's going to point you to events that happen at Armageddon. That's Armageddon is Megiddo, the valley of Megiddo. They took no gain for money. Verse 20, they fought from heaven. What? They fought from heaven. The stars in their courses fought against Sisera. Huh? That is, there's something supernatural going on in heaven. Those stars were fighting. Now, it's not the twinkle, twinkle, little star. It's the angelic stars. Remember, we read about the devil, Lucifer, saying, I'll set my throne above the stars of God, the angelic beings. Verse 21. The river of Kishon swept them away. And that Kishon, that's a river that flows right through the valley of Megiddo. And it's not on this map, but it's over there. O my soul, thou hast trodden down strength. Then were the horse hoofs broken by the means of the prancings of their mighty ones. They're mighty ones. We're going to find mighty ones. Doesn't refer to humans. Verse 23. Curse ye Meraz, however you say that. Meraz. Said the angel of the Lord. You know who that is? More than likely, that's Jesus Christ before he had a body. He's down here fighting. And he comes up and he says, curse Meraz, well, however you say that word, says the angel of the Lord, curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord. Somebody was supposed to be coming out to help God fight.
And they say it twice.
Yes. To the help of the Lord against, here's that mighty, the mighty. Well, that refers back to what we saw in verse 20. The stars in their forces fought against Sisera that day. Okay, something supernatural was going on. Now, let's find the word I can't pronounce. Meraz. I believe that is a different spelling of something else we find. Job chapter 9. Job 9 verse 8. This is just a passage referring to God's handiwork, which alone spreadeth out the heavens and treadeth upon the waves of the sea, which maketh Arcturus, Orion, and Pleiades, and the chambers of the south. That's all the constellations in the sky, which doeth great things and findeth out, yea, wonders without number. Okay, that's what God does. Now, it sounds like those constellations have on them populations of angelic beings, and they all have a job to do. Now, we think of heaven as being one little spot. I mean, it's going to be pretty, that's the way people think. And they all sit around the throne, and they play on harps, and I'm sure it's banjos, but people think it's harps. But that's not the way it is. If he's got all of that stuff up there, he's got it for a reason, and you can bet it's not just sitting there vacant. He's got them all busy doing something. Look at it in another passage, Job 38. Job 38, verse 31. Canst thou bind the sweet influence of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Okay, that's the constellations. Verse 32. Canst thou bring forth, and here's the word I think is a different spelling, Mazzaroth in his season. I think that's a constellation as well. And he's got angelic beings up there. Now, you find this played out in the book of Daniel. Daniel says, or Michael says, or maybe it was Gabriel, says to Daniel, I heard you praying, and it took me 21 days to get here because we had a fight going on up there. And the prince of Persia, what? But he's talking about something supernatural. So there's a mirror going on in the heavenlies to what's going on the earth. And there's real warfare going on up there. And so here's this Mazzaroth, okay? There's probably some of God's sons of God, angels out there that are working in that constellation. And he's telling them when it's time to fight some supernatural battle, just like they fought with Sisera, they were supposed to come and help. Just like Michael and Gabriel helped each other fight in the book of Daniel. Look at Revelation. Nope, we've covered all that. Look at Revelation 12. Revelation 12, verse 4. Revelation 12, verse 4. This, of course, is the devil. He's coming to earth, and he's going after Israel. This is when he's been kicked out. I think what's happened here, I'm giving you too much detail. What I think happens here is we get raptured out of here. We are gone. And that'll be a great day. Woo. And we go to heaven, and then we go right into the principal's office. We sit for the judgment seat of Christ. And then I believe what happens is that's during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. Because the devil's not here for that. The Antichrist is. He has a placeholder show up and take his place, or the place that he's going to take. Because I think he comes up to heaven to be at the judgment that we're judged for. Because the Bible calls him the accuser of the brethren. It's a hearing. And he accuses them. And my advocate, my daysman, as Job says, stands up and clears me of all charges. And then he gets kicked out of heaven. And that's what we have in chapter 12 of Revelation. Look at verse 4. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to deliver her child as soon as it was born. Okay, so here we go. The devil's kicked out. He brings with him, or he says his tail, knocks out a third of the angels that are there. He says he was going to set his throne above the stars of God. Well, he's just kicked them down to heaven, or to earth, and that's exactly what he's going to do. His throne, his seat of power, is going to be above those forces that will now be demonic.
So this whole tail thing,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so this third, do they of their own free will go with him?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's similar to what we saw in Judges. The Mazzaroth or Mazar whatever. Yeah, right there. Those didn't come to help the Lord. Okay? They of their own free will chose to rebel against God. And he cursed them. Okay? Just like people think that angels, God had angels and he had to create man because he wanted somebody to love him with a free will and not because they had to. Angels don't have to. Lucifer proved to you that. And over, a third of them is going to prove they have a free will too, and they're going to leave. Genesis chapter 6 proved there's angelic animals up there. I'm calling them animals. angelic things up there that have free will and choose wrong. Okay, so they have free will too. He just created a different type of being. He created animals. They don't have free will. He's created a lot of things. He just created man because he felt like doing it.
Well, animals don't have souls, do they?
That's a good question. I don't know. They have to have souls.
Go ahead.
They have to have souls because the soul is your psyche. That's the control center of your body. They also have to have spirits because he says in Hebrews they're all ministering spirits. Okay, so they have a soul and a spirit. They do not have a body. They can take the form of any body that God allows them to.
I thought I heard something out of Kim's mouth about animals, and anyway, somehow animals and angels are getting interchanged. Remember, what are you talking about?
And I was saying that some people say God created man because he wanted something that would love him with a free will. And I was saying he has angels that have a free will, animals that don't have a free will. There's lots of things. He just created man. He just created man because he felt like it.
No, she asked no, she just asked if angels had souls.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk later. I got all jumbled in.
Okay, Revelation 12, verse 4. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and he cast them to the earth. Okay, so that's angelic beings. That's a third of the angels that fall. That's what it's referred to. I'll show you the other passage on it. Luke chapter 10. Luke 10, verse 18. Most people will tell you that the third of the angels that fell at this time when Christ was on earth, and he locked them away in chains of darkness for 1,000 years, and they're gone. But it's not so, because in Revelation we found out where they fell. Luke chapter 10 is Christ given a prophecy of the very thing we read about in Luke chapter 12. Luke 10, verse 18. And he said unto them, Behold, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Okay, he's not been kicked out yet.
And you meant Revelation 12, not Luke 12.
Luke 10,
Right.
not 12. Luke 10, verse 18. And that is the same event as Revelation 12. Verse 19. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Now, let's think about that. People will tell you, verse 18 happened when Jesus was walking the earth. That's when Satan got kicked out of heaven. Well, then Revelation 12 should have happened then, and it didn't. Furthermore, verse 19 has not happened. Did the disciples get hurt by their enemies? Yeah. Crucified and all of them martyrs, and yeah. There's coming a day when we come back that the enemy won't be able to hurt us while we're killing them at Armageddon. And that fits. And it fits with an event that's going to happen after Revelation 12. Revelation 12 is the same as Luke 10:18. Revelation Armageddon and Second Advent will probably match with verse 19 of Luke 10, right in there. Okay, one more passage and then we better cut it off before we get too deep. Revelation 12:12. Revelation 12:12. After telling us in verse 4 that a third of the angels got kicked out, or he knocked them out with his tail, He says in verse 12, Revelation 12:12, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them." Okay, that's going to be us. We're dwelling there now. I mean, in this passage. We'll have been in heaven at that point. And he's probably referring to the angelic beings that didn't rebel. They're to rejoice. "Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." Okay, that's where the devil incarnate sits down and becomes the son of perdition. He comes in and he takes over this position that the Antichrist has been holding. And there it's the devil running the show for the last half of the tribulation. And we'll end on that happy note. Any questions, any comments? That's heavy stuff tonight. Deep stuff. All right. Work on it, see if you can come up with anything that I missed.
There at the end, you're talking about when he comes down during the tribulation, when they goes into the temple, declares
Yes.
God.
Yeah.